Football Manager recently posted a huge blog post about all the changes that are coming to FM25, including the removal of some features, which has definitely sparked debate. But I think the meatiest part of that blog post and the most talked about was certainly the changes to the new UI. Now, Football Manager are kind of adopting a new tile and card system that they're explaining here, as we can see, and although we've only seen from a couple of images, the split between people who think it looks good and people who think it looks hideous is right down the middle. Now, I'm actually kind of in between myself. I think I need to see more. The UI, or the default skin that we're using right now, I think is absolutely hideous. It's boring. It looks like a spreadsheet, and although we've grown up with the game being looking like that, video games and graphics have come on leaps and bounds. We shouldn't have a game that looks that ugly, and that's the reason why everybody uses a custom skin, and I don't understand why Football Manager have never used a custom skin designer to make their default skin look better. But that's besides the point. What we see here, as they've mentioned, isn't the final design. So we might see something a little bit more improved. This could be just a template that they are using. Things might change, things might improve, or it could be exactly what we're going to see. I do think it is an improvement, though, from what we do have. Maybe I was expecting a little bit more, but also at the same time, I'm not quite sure what I was hoping for it to look like, because it is obviously still wanted to be a Football Manager game. And that actually prompted me to think, what do I want to see from Football Manager? What do I want to see in the next game or the game after that that is added or improved to what we see right now and what we play to make the game more enjoyable and potentially bring in a wider audience? Because at the end of the day, the more people that buy the game, the more money that gets pumped back into the game and the better game that we actually get. But just remember, okay, before you go down in the comments, this is just something that I'd like to see. I'm intrigued to see what you want to have in the game as well down in the comment section. Just be nice to each other. So I've come up with a list, and I think probably the last one is maybe the most controversial, but also maybe the most interesting idea. So I'll leave that to your interpretation as well. But I do want to start on the UI, because this is kind of what I've been asking for ages, in terms of I wanted a better UI system. I don't think I've ever really enjoyed the system that we have got in the last like 4 or 5 years. I think it's too much like small text, too much clunkiness and trying to find stuff. And for a new user, awful, absolutely awful. This is an improvement, but there are still things that worry me. I do think some of the text and everything is just too small. Like, there's a gap here. Make these buttons bigger, for instance. The messages, if that's like emails this year, I don't really think I'll be using it that much, other than when you have to, because what I do find is that Football Manager right now, you've just become basically admin for a Football Manager, because there's so many emails and pointless emails that, I mean, how many of the emails do you actually look at and take in? I reckon 3 out of 10 emails are really important to me, maybe even less. So the agenda thing, by the looks of it, where it's kind of the ones where you have to do, attend the match, confirm match squad, that might actually simplify that, and I do like that. So in terms of that, I want to see more things like that. Let's get rid of the fluff. Let's get rid of the faff. And let's focus on things that you genuinely have to do. And then have that for the people still that really want a very intrusive game where you really dive into it. Because at the end of the day, we want a game that everybody can play in whatever way that they want to play it. I prefer to play it where I just have the very limited things to do. Some people like to dive right in and do everything. So that's kind of my first kind of wish. Now, my second wish, I've loaded up Football Manager because I think it's the best way to explain it. But every single year, we tend to get a new player role. And this year, I think, obviously, the inverted fullback has been a fantastic addition to Football Manager to go alongside the libero on support, which can be used across any of the front three. And we've already seen, my friend Stinger really utilize the fact that you can build crazy tactics and fun tactics using those new player roles. And I think that's great. I think the more options we have for that, the better. Even if it is the likes of, I don't know, Ramdeuter or Enganche that people don't really tend to use a lot, the fact that you still got an option to try that is great. And there's a player role that I think Football Manager, actually I think have probably tried and just maybe not been able to perfect yet. That's the ball-playing goalkeeper. Right now, we have sweeper keeper and goalkeeper. Sweeper keeper was brought in and introduced probably because of Manuel Neuer, who was a very good, famous sweeper keeper, should we say, the way he started to play the game. They've been before in the past, obviously, I know that. And then there's obviously the normal standard goalkeeper, you know, that came around beforehand. To be honest, it's kind of like when Joe Hart was replaced by Ederson. That's probably the best way of explaining it, really. But then there come a different type of goalkeeper. The ball-playing goalkeeper, which Ederson has probably become as well. Very good on the ball. A goalkeeper that's unbelievable at passing. I've got Cabell here at Dortmund. He's got 12 passing, all right first touch. Probably wouldn't be the best ball-playing goalkeeper, but he's a good sweeper keeper. But we all know when you've got the likes of Diogo Costa in your games late on, and he has 14 for passing, 11 for first touch, and good vision, you want a ball-playing goalkeeper, a goalkeeper that will, when you're on the attack and you're building up from the back, maybe will step up a little bit more and be part of that back three. Now, I probably can guess that that's where the problems are going to lie in terms of getting this to work, the match engine. But if they can get that to work, I think that is a player role that hasn't been introduced yet that really needs to be the ball-playing goalkeeper. Now, it was either last year or the year before, Football Manager introduced better AI transfers, and I do think it did improve. I still think it needs improving a little bit more. But I think now we need to have a look at more of the balance of the new gens coming through. Some of the new gens that come through are unbelievably good. I mean, this one here is like 22. He's phenomenal. But the new gens that come through never replicate what players would be like in real life. For instance, like, I mean, this guy's a natural centre mid, but he's also a natural right back, and that's not unheard of, I know that. But it seems to happen way more in Football Manager, that we have a player, like, I swear in like one of my takeovers or rebuilds that I do, I had a player that can either play centre attack in midfield or left back, naturally. And again, yeah, it's possible, but the balance is always off, and I feel like new gen strikers come through. On one game, you'll have every new gen striker be unbelievable at finishing, composure, off the ball and pace. And then the next time, the best strikers in the world have like 11 finishing and terrible composure. But because they have really good strength, really good bravery, off the ball, teamwork and work rate, the AI sees it as like, this guy's world class, and maybe he has a potential rating of like 190, but that 190 is with like 8 finishing and 8 off the ball. And I think the balance, especially in fullbacks, I mean, this is obviously an example of a really good fullback, but the balance from in terms of fullbacks that come through is always very limited. You're really lucky if you can find a good fullback new gen when you're playing like 10 years into the future. They're very scarce. They're very hard to come by. I think the balance of new gens needs looking at. Not to mention, by the way, if you are also looking at the new gens, there's AI around now. It's so easy to make good faces. Let's get rid of these, shall we? Let's improve these. AI is unbelievable now at how fast and how good you can make a realistic generation of a player look without it being, you know, copyright laws or anything like that because it looks like somebody else. Come on, let's get that into the game. Now, you know me, I like to beat the drum of the old rebuilds and simulations in Football Manager, and that's obviously a conversation for a different story. But from the video that I made a couple of weeks ago, it became very apparent how many of you guys also play that way. And I think a lot of people are realizing now that if you don't have a lot of time, it's a very fun way of playing Football Manager. If you have, you know, a job, kids, whatever, that takes up a lot of your spare time, and you've only got an hour a night to play Football Manager, you can get a season done, really, if you're quite quick, definitely within 2 days or 2 hours of playing Football Manager through holidaying and simulating. But the game punishes you for doing that, and I don't think it should. If you look at this, right, this is my Luton Town takeover that I did. I think we won the league this season, but the manager of the month is my assistant manager each time, so I don't get any recognition of those games. as a manager, and some would argue that's how it should be. You weren't present, you weren't whatever. But in other games, it's not like that. NBA games, if you simulate the season, but your manager is the best one, you get manager of the year. In this, you don't. And I'd like to change that. Right now, it says go on holiday. I'd like to change it to simulate to. I think that's the wording and things like that needs to change, because there is a very large group of players who play the game this way now. And especially now the games come onto console. Whether you like it or not, whether you play the game normal, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. But what I would suggest is that these people who are playing that game doesn't affect you. So if you do play it normally anyway, it's not going to affect how you play it. So for all of these new people who play the game the same way as I play the game, let's make it better for us, right? Let's change the game and how it is played, because right now, going on holiday, it sucks the way it is. It needs to change to have the ability for players who play the game that way to make it feel more realistic. You know, we're not getting... there's another way that I want to explain this. Right. So I'm in 2032 and I've been the manager of Luton Town for God knows how many years. And you can see down here my competition wins and everything like that. But according to this, I've only played 21 games in my career, because that's the 21 games I use the instant result skin. I don't play any of the games, to be honest, unless it's a cup final, because I need to get the footage of lifting the cup trophy, which is another thing that I have a gripe with on Football Manager, but that's besides the point. It says I've only played 21 games. I've played way more. Let's change that, right? Let's make it to simulate to. Simulate the season in one button. People always message me or leave comments and say, "Hi Luke, how do you simulate the season?" Because I feel like they think I have a button which goes simulate season, and then that's it. I don't. That's just editing. It's going on holiday and sitting there for 25 minutes to half an hour waiting for it to do it. So yeah, it's a very personal one, but I know a lot of you guys play that way as well, and I'd like that change. I really would. Now, my final thing on the wish list, I did say it was probably the most controversial, but maybe the most interesting. If you go on to Football Manager, you have a preferences button, which shows you basically all the stuff that you can change on the game. Like, this is how I play the game. I play it on 150 zoomed in because the text is too small for me, using obviously that skin, etc. And obviously you could change it however you like, but the game itself will still play exactly the same no matter what my settings are. Like, it's not going to change anything in terms of the gameplay, which means every single game you play, whatever team you are, Liverpool will act exactly the same. And, you know, there's not enough randomness. There's not enough changes in difficulty to make every single game feel different. However, I know it's very different, but if you play for the likes of EAFC, there's obviously sliders, which you can say, yes, I want the game to be a little bit more difficult, or I want it to be easier for me. I just want to have a fun time. I don't really care about how hard it is, or even harder. I mean, the NBA games used to be ridiculously hard, and you couldn't change the sliders in some of the modes, but the ones you could meant that I could play the game because I was a beginner. And I think Football Manager needs a slider system, because as a person who's been playing this game for years and years and years, I get really bored of how easy sometimes I can make the game for myself. I want to make the game more difficult. I want a slider which says, for instance, if I go on here, it will say slider settings, and maybe it's something you can only set up before you start the game, which I'd probably say is the best way, so that you can't change it mid-game. But have something when you start the game that comes up as slider settings, difficulty settings, and yet maybe it says over here, for instance, like AI transfer intelligence, and you can put it up really high, and if it's really high, they know all the good Wonder Kids. They are going to find them out quite easily. They're the PSG, you know, right? PSG seem to already have that slider, I think. They find these Wonder Kids really well. Or they pick off really good deals. Or you can go down the bottom. They're not so smart. They're signing duff players. They're signing really old players. Maybe it makes the game a little bit unrealistic, but maybe a little bit more fun. And we have different settings for each thing. Again, with AI tactics, like maybe the tactics are really intelligent and really good and hard to play against. or they're a lot easier. And somebody who's very new to the game can go, okay, I've tried a game on normal settings and I was sacked every single time. Because again, a lot of the messages, I mean, you guys might play in it. You might be somebody who's been playing this game for ages. So it might not affect you. You might not realize, but there are so many new people playing this game. 10 million people played this game this year, which was also on that dev blog. 10 million. That's the most ever by pretty much double. Which means 5 million, probably, new players played the game. And I wonder how many played it and went, it's too difficult, and stopped playing it. Because some people don't have a lot of patience or, or just understanding. Maybe they don't have enough time to learn the game. Having some kind of slider settings where it can, change the difficulty of the game. Make the game easier for you. So when you're trying to negotiate transfers, the AI negotiation can be lower, so when you buy players, you can easily buy them, or really hard. So, teams are a bit dickish to you and don't really want to sell players to you. You get the Man United effect, where it's kind of like, oh, you're Man United, double the price. And make the game harder, because not only will it make it better for guys who are experts at the game, or guys who play the game a lot, like me, where we can put the sliders up and make it more difficult, more fun, and engaging content by going, hey, I played Football Manager on the hardest difficulty ever, we could do all stuff like that. But for the new user, the new person who's picked up, little Jimmy, who's picked up the game for the very first time on console or whatever, he's a 14-year-old kid and he loves football, he's bored of EAFC, he wants to get into a football game, he sees Football Manager, he goes on a play and goes, what the hell is this? And he has no idea what's good, how to do the game, whatever. Having those sliders to go, alright, well, I did see those sliders at the start there, let's try and start a game where the sliders are down, get used to the game first. Then when I'm used to it, I can then play a game with the sliders on default, see what happens then. I really do feel like the entry point of Football Manager is so high in terms of how much knowledge you need to play the game to get through the game without getting sacked, that sometimes we need to bring that down to allow new players to be able to pick up the game for the very first time and go, all right, I'm understanding it now. And then after a couple of seasons go, all right, I'm finding this easy now. I know how to play the game. Let's crank it up a bit. Let's go and play how the game is intended for people who know how to play the game. Every other game does it. A lot of the games that don't have it, I never play. Your Dark Souls, your Elden Ring, stuff like that. I've given those games a go. I am not very good at them. So I think the entry point of the game using sliders and obviously making it more difficult could be huge in terms of what we can bring to new users, old users, experts of the game to make it more interesting, more fun, more challenging. Because at the end of the day, everybody on Football Manager, if you've played the game for a while, you judge people when they play at the easier sides. You all do it, even I do it, even though I play it myself where I like the best teams. When somebody comes over to me and was like, mate, I'll play Football Manager as well, I've done a Man United save and I've won the league 10 years in a row, I'm like, okay, like, cool, good for you, but the difficulty settings are obviously all the same on everything, so it's not too much of a hard challenge. So everybody always goes, wow, you need to start in tier 10, download the database, start tier 10, then I'll respect you as a Football Manager player. Which also, by the way, don't be that guy, but still, having these settings to allow challenges like that be really strict, financially, tactically, the AI manager against you, could be a lot of fun. Could be a lot of fun. But let me know what you guys think. I hope you have some fantastic ideas. I hope maybe you found some of my ideas interesting. I'd love to know your thoughts, but again, number one rule, just don't be a dick. Don't be a dick to other people down in the comments. And let's just see and hope and fingers crossed that Football Manager 2025 is as good as we really want it to be. And there are some improvements coming. Yes, it's annoying that they are taking some of the things out that maybe you guys have played. But they're doing it for a reason, I guess. Let's just see what happens within the next year. And yeah, let me know what you think.